I'm a traveler, I'm a nomad, I'm an explorer. I'm from a diversified background. My mother is from India, but grew up in the northern part, but she was originally born in Rwanda. My father is from North Carolina, from the south, and I grew up in Winston-Salem, North Carolina as well. So my background is diverse. My mother's from one side of the world, my dad's from the other. But in my growing up childhood, I started to realize that a globalized perspective was something that was normal. From one hand, I had the challenge of going to a high school where I'm a white kid, but I'm half this, half that. Most of the people around me were all the same. Their parents were both from Winston-Salem, North Carolina, and then, there's me. One of the challenges for me as a young kid, I had two grandparents. One lived in my hometown, and the other one lived across the ocean. So the one across the ocean, my Indian grandmother, was someone who I really, really wanted to connect with. She didn't speak my language, but when I was born, she had come to Winston-Salem to spend time with my mom. So as a young child, I would always tell my mom, I want to talk to grandmother. Can we talk to Nani? And what would happen is we would buy a phone card, we would stay up really late, and then the phone would ring, 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 and then a familiar tone would come on and say, hello. And I would tell everything I wanted to know about her. I would share my life, and then I would get an affirmative, yes, yes. But I realized over time that she didn't speak my language, so how can I connect with her? So when I was 18, I had the greatest thing happen in my life. My mom had given me some money, and she said, you are finally going to meet your grandmother. So I crossed the ocean, 16-hour flight. I got to India, and I spent 3 weeks with her. And those 3 weeks, I talked to her. She showed me pictures. I spent time with her. And I bonded with her. Now, one of the challenges of me being with her was, how do you communicate with someone who doesn't speak your language? How do you spend time with someone who's so different from you? But these two people, my American grandmother and my Indian grandmother, they came around me and showed me how to live my life. They would tell me, Alex, you have to live your dream. You have to find your calling. You have to find what you really want. Now, over time, I connect my life to an analogy called the playground analogy. So the playground analogy is described as a child is young, goes out onto a playground, and discovers anything based on curiosity. So curiosity defines the outlook of this little child. He or she does not care what's around, and he or she will walk and try to discover. So in this analogy, curiosity is defined as the idea or the desire to know, the desire to learn. So in these two pictures, both of these cultures, I desired to know more based on curiosity. So you have to want to desire. You have to want to be curious. And today I'm going to share ways that I did it through a couple sets of images. Food. We all love food. We all need to eat food to have happiness in our lives, or at least for me from the South. So in these three pictures, what do you see? What do you want to see? What do you want to know? So when I look at these pictures that were all taken by me in my own travels, I want to connect, especially today, with the one on the end. So, after I finished university, I joined the United States Peace Corps. And my posting that I was given was to come to Murovny Kurylivsy in Ukraine. So this lady is someone I lived with, or I shared time with. She's my babusia. This lady was someone who was from the Soviet Union. She's not from my place, not from the place that I grew up in, but she was someone that, after learning enough Ukrainian to talk to her, I could start to connect with her. So based on curiosity, I asked her questions. I wanted to know more information about what she does, how she lives, how she conducts her life. And in this picture, as she has different berries on her hands, and she's making jam, I was curious to know, how do you make this jam? Why is this something you're doing? And so on and so forth. So my curiosity rose, and by asking questions, I could work with her, I could learn from her, and I could connect to her. Even though she's someone who's very different from me, the common question that became a daily question, you could say, was, can you teach me this? Can you teach me this? Can I learn from you based on what you're doing? So by the end of my 2.5 years in Ukraine, I had learned how to plant a vegetable garden. I had learned how to cultivate mushrooms picked in a forest. So the person in the middle, this was on one of my travels to Costa Rica. I lived and worked on a chocolate farm, and this man taught me how to cultivate cacao pods and make truffles. So the way that I learned from him was to learn a little Spanish and ask questions about food. This lady on the end, she sold me butter in my Ukrainian village. Every day when I would go and buy butter, she would ask me questions about, why do you wear these colors? Why do you want to buy this butter? And in a cross-cultural exchange, I would ask her, why is this butter more expensive than this one? And she would teach me. So, as you look at these 3 photos, who are these people? What language do they speak? What can you learn from them? All 3 of these people are very different. This man speaks Hindi, this girl speaks Kyrgyz, and this lady speaks Ukrainian. When you look at these pictures, you can take a minute to understand a culture based on the colors that you see. But on the other hand, if you want to know a little bit about a language, you have to ask more questions. You have to learn. When I was given the opportunity to come to Ukraine, I was told in my first couple days, Alex, you will speak Ukrainian. And the challenge in my mind became, why am I not speaking Russian? Why am I learning Ukrainian? I, as a person, am a situational learner. What that means is I choose situations and learn vocabulary based on what I'm doing. So in situations in meeting these people, I learn new things about their culture by asking questions and asking them about their language. The lady at the end is a lady that sold me bread in Ukraine. I would say, teach me all the words about bread making in Ukrainian. And she would tell me words. So every time I would meet with her, she would teach me 1 or 2 new words about this type of bread, that type of bread, something that she was selling. The person in the middle is a girl that I met in Almaty. She's a Kyrgyz speaker, and I said, every time I go to Kyrgyzstan, I want to say a word that's from your language. By asking questions and being curious, she taught me a little bit more. This boy at the end is from the area where my mom is from in India. He would sit on the street and he would sew, and over time he would teach me different words relating to sewing in Hindi. So in these three situations, I gained more knowledge as a situational learner. Ceremonies. What do you see in these photos? Who are these people? What don't you see? Sometimes culture is related to a tree. The leaves, the branches, they show us about the culture, but you have to ask questions to know more about why. So in the situation of a ceremony, we can see these photos and we can understand everything possible. But how much do you really know? So in the picture at the end, that's actually my mother. This was my mother on her wedding day about to get married to my father. In the middle, this is a ceremony on the Indian-Pakistani border. It happens every day, people go and watch, but as you look at this, it doesn't look like a traditional Indian outfit. But to look at it more and to ask why and when and how, we can learn about what type of ceremony that is. And the one I want to focus on is this boy holding bread. So one of my places that I've really enjoyed traveling to is Tajikistan. It's in Central Asia, it's a small country, it's rich in its history and its culture. So this boy is someone that I met while hiking in the Fan Mountains of northern Tajikistan. So this boy was someone I spotted, and with the help of a translator, I wanted to know more. So he was running with this loaf of bread, he's coming up a path, and I said, "Stop, I want to know what you're doing. Why you're coming, where are you coming from?" As I started to ask the questions, he responded through the help of a translator and said, "I'm bringing this bread from a village in a valley all the way to the top of a mountain to prepare for a wedding." I was fascinated. I wanted to know more. I used my facial expressions to ask the questions. And then at some point I said, "Can I take a picture of you?" And he said, "Yes." I took this photo, and then everything changed. He stopped, he broke this bread, and he said, "This is a piece of my culture. Take this. Welcome to Tajikistan." He crossed a cultural barrier. He doesn't speak my language. He doesn't know me. He doesn't know anything about my desires. But he welcomed me into his culture by just saying, "Here is something for you." And from that story, I have a long-term desire to help the people of Tajikistan. So, as I kind of wrap up, culture is something that's unknown. But in order to build or connect to it, asking questions can gain or can give you much more of a cultural perspective. Culture is yours. My parents, my grandmothers have taught me in my life to live my dream. I'm living my dream now standing in front of you today. I want you to ask questions, and I want you to gain the culture and gain the cultural perspectives that you want. Thank you.